don't have one, of you guys that can't count, it's a real nice little setup. I have to admit, it's well done, it's well made, and it's better than some of my stoves, worse than other stoves. But generally speaking, I would want to allow 20 milliliters, 22 milliliters, and 7, 8, 9 minutes for a boil on a good day. If it's cold, it's going to take a lot more, just like with any alcohol stove. 10 cc's, 4 or 5 minutes, 10 milliliters, 4 or 5 minutes, not going to happen. That would be, rhubarb, once again. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Now, when I hike, if I want to know how far I went, I don't count my steps, I don't guess at it. I take a GPS with me. It tells me how fast I'm going and how far I've been. I ran into a gentleman the other day that told me that the 100-mile wilderness, which I've hiked most of, is actually only 64 miles and can be done in 3 days. Rhubarb, it's actually well over 100 miles, and you ain't doing over 100 miles in what the Appalachian Trail Guide says is some of the most remote and tough wilderness of the entire Appalachian Trail. That's not my words, that's the Appalachian Trail Club's words. And believe me, from what I've seen of it, I don't think it could get more desolate or tougher climate. It is really, really rustic, and that's not rhubarb. I was fortunate enough to be on Moxie Ball Mountain the other day, and before I got there at the Moxie Ball Brook Shelter, I ran into a gentleman, which I'm going to tell you the whole story because it's comical. Soon I came into the shelter, which, by the way, is about 200 yards off of the main trail on a Blue Blaze trail through some muck and gunk that I don't even know why they put the thing back there. There's a perfectly nice tenting spot right down by the brook, right on the trail, and this is 200 yards up in a muck hole. When you get there, right in front of the shelter, there's 3.5 inches of mud and water. Really bad place for a shelter. And I thought, well, they put it to get it away from the river, but lo and behold, it's still right next to the stream, so that wasn't it. Coincidentally, because of where this shelter is, to go to the bathroom, you have to walk 200 yards downhill through muck, and I'm talking nasty stuff, down over embankments and around rocks, out to the main trail, walk another 50 yards, cross a brook, walk another 50 yards, take a right, walk another 100 yards, which, as near as I can add all together, is right around a quarter of a mile to get from the shelter to the bathroom. Wouldn't be a good place for somebody with diarrhea. Why it is so far away from the shelter, I have not a clue, but anyway, now that we've got past that having been said, when I come onto the shelter, there was gear all laid out. Half of the shelter was covered with gear and stoves and clothes and boots and pots and pans. And there was a sleeping bag there with one of those little blue foam pads underneath it. And when I walked up, inside the sleeping bag, there was a body. Now this was noontime, 12 noon, high noon. And if you've ever been backpacking, you probably know that at high noon, most people aren't in their sleeping bag. This was zipped right up, hood pulled up, so it was just a face and a beard sticking out, and it wasn't moving. My first thought was, this poor gentleman died during the night, and his poor corpse is still stuck in that bag, and he's dead, because anybody else would have gotten up off their stinking butt and gotten out of there and be hiking. I always stood around there for like 10 minutes, talking and waiting. I was very uncomfortable because I had really suspected that I was in a shelter with a dead person. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't have any great affection for dead bodies. Anyway, after about 10 minutes, he finally moved. First movement I saw him, I couldn't even see him breathing. That was quite a relief to find out that he was alive. And so he told me that he'd spent 5 hours up on Moxie Bald, and he actually had come down off the trail in total darkness. I don't even understand that, but anyway. So I asked him if there was any place up there to camp, and he said no. And I said, not any place to pitch a tent at all? And he got mad at me. He told me, you'll see when you get up there. No. To that I'd like to reply, rhubarb. I got up there and I counted 7 or 8 good places to pitch a tent. Well, as you can see in the video, I had a real good place to pitch a tent. And if I'd wanted to take the time for it to be a little warmer to go back down to the next drop, where there was a cliff that was probably 15 or 20 feet with an absolutely flat surface with about that much terra firma where I could actually stake down my tent, I would have had an absolute perfect spot for pitching my tent. But it was cold and I'd already pitched the tent before I found it, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to get down to that next level, so I stayed where I was. But anyway, just for the record, there's all kinds of places to pitch a tent on Moxie Bald. If you look, I suspect the 5 hours he was up there, he was probably asleep. He seemed to be a fairly sleepy guy. So, that's my spin on rhubarb. I'm Tinny. Get out and hike, and more important than anything, don't believe everything you hear. And have a great day. Bye-bye.